Hello, friends, and happy Cinco de Mayo. Or if you're watching at a later date, happy whatever day it is for you. You might be looking at the runtime of this video and thinking, ain't nobody got time for that. Well, this week I had some technical difficulties trying to make the last episode, and it took a lot of time. So this is more of a just straight podcast format. I'll have some images going, but it won't be any of the kind of editing that I've done before. So just put this up in the background while you're doing laundry. Maybe you're cooking dinner, whatever, and just enjoy us two nerds talking about Game of Thrones. And be sure to subscribe to find out if Ghost is dead or if he's an a-hole. Lingering questions we have. Are there more White Walkers? What was Bran doing? Does Bran/Three-Eyed Raven have his own secret agenda? Hello and welcome. I'm Ig.
And I'm Dan.
And here we go into episode 3, The Long Night General Discussion. You know what? I meant to look it up, but in the titles, in the little Winterfell, you see the battlements kind of going up. I don't know if that's the proper term for them, but like the trench with the spikes.
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't remember if that was on there before.
It was in the second episode. It was not in the first.
Ah, okay. I might have been getting a cocktail together at the beginning of the second episode. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I actually was going to mention that last week, and then I forgot.
But opening shot, handing Scared Sam a couple of obsidian dragonglass daggers. Tyrion stocking up on wine to bring down into the crypts. Then we got the Ironborn escorting Bran to the Godswood, and you see Alice Karstark, that she hasn't had anything to do this season, but she seems to go with the Ironborn. She's walking with Bran into the Godswood.
Huh.
So I guess
did not
she's
notice
dead.
that.
Yeah, you see her last episode when they're at the table making the plans. I think she's standing there with Theon, giving him the eye, like, you're going to protect Bran? What? And I don't know, maybe there's some deleted scenes of her talking to Bran, or I don't know what, but she's right there with them, marching to the Godswood. And since they're all dead, I assume she's dead now. I don't know.
No one got any points for her.
Unsullied at the front lines, and we got siege weapons.
Poorly placed sieged weapons.
Well,
but yes.
I've heard that complaint, and I mean...
Put them behind the fire line thing. The planning of this battle was not done well.
Well, we're getting into
as
that.
As we discussed last time as well. But
we get a look at all of our troops laid out. I like the Hound being late and just shoving through. Jorah is in command with the Dothraki. We got Ghost there. So very excited to see him. But then, of course, as we already discussed, disappointed we didn't get to see any action. Insulting, patronizing for fans that have been waiting to see Ghost again.
Which is why he's still alive and he's going to come back later.
Oh, and then we have a lone rider from the shadows. And it's what I would like to call Mirror Universe Gandalf. I think a lot of people have trouble with how she got there, but I'm fine with that. She came from the south and looped around, and totally makes sense. I love that little moment where Jorah kind of hesitates with her, and you hear the army of the dead out there in the darkness. They're like little hissing and rasping yells and calls and things. But yeah, she is very confident in her magic now. I think it was kind of ambiguous.
I actually would say she wasn't.
Well, in that first, when she's lighting their Araks, or whatever they're called, she was very confident. She's like, tell them to raise their swords and flame on.
But even then, I feel like it took longer than she was expecting it to.
I mean, I think you're more thinking of the trench. The trench, there was like a couple of moments of worry that she's like, is this going to happen?
I don't know. I feel like it was in both, but yeah, obviously more so in the trench.
Oh, one nitpick I have, and I'm going to list a series of nitpicks. To clarify, when I say nitpick, I mean this is something I thought of and kind of took issue with, but it didn't affect my enjoyment of it, because there's a lot of salty comments out there about the episode. Some fans are really miffed. But my nitpick, my nerd alert nitpick there, is that the Dothraki don't seem bothered by her. In other times, the Dothraki seem very anti-magic, anti-witches. Remember, like, season 1 when they're like, she's a Maigi, like their word for witch, and they're like spitting on her and all this stuff. And anytime that they're like, this is dark magic, like, no, we can't have anything to do with this. But this red woman shows up out of the dark, and they're like, yeah, cool, flaming swords, let's go.
So I would say two things about that. One, they were also very against boats. But they trust, Daenerys and those people.
True.
and B, I don't remember if I said 1 or A, but in any case, 2, B. I feel like everyone in this position, like we've seen a lot of scared looks from various people. I feel like they're kind of in the same position. They're like, hey, we'll take what we can get at this point.
Sure. Do they fully understand that they are going up against the army of the dead?
I would hope so. Because that's not cool.
So I was trying to think about it. I mean, there was at that meeting, Kono, I think, and a couple other Dothraki maybe, when they presented the white. But yeah, I don't know. Okay, so the Flame On get an uncharacteristic smile from Ed. So the Dothraki charge in. What is the plan? A lot of people are upset about this. I was kind of frustrated at first. There was a post by someone saying that they think the original plan was for the Dothraki to charge in, sort of like meet the dead, and then immediately pull back to like draw them in to the front line, which is a classic medieval and ancient warfare tactic. And that the idea is that they got the flaming swords, Araks, and it kind of gave them this confidence boost, and so they got a little carried away. And point of evidence to that is Jorah seems to be in command of them. He gave them a command and they followed it. There's that shot where they kind of overtake him. It's almost like he didn't give the order for them to charge.
Yeah, it did seem sudden. I did notice that. I was like, I feel like it was so immediately after they got, fired up.
Right.
Yeah. Where did this come from? So yeah, that would kind of make sense.
Yeah, the complaints of this plan is stupid, sending in your cavalry first. It's like, well, I don't think they did. The Dothraki aren't necessarily the most disciplined of soldiers, and I mean, they're literally barbarians. And I think they were like, hey, we've got flaming swords, and people were all excitable, and it just took off and spread like wildfire. Mine's not as good as yours, but and Jorah was like, well, I better go along with this anyway. So again, the fan service with Ghost, but we don't get to see Ghost in action. Just, what's the point? I mean, might as well not even have him in the episode.
I would prefer to have him not be there because his presence there makes no sense.
Yeah.
To me. Like, he would not be charging with like, that's not where you would use Ghost. And Ghost would probably be hanging out with Jon as well, I think. But
I think it's kind of both because, obviously he should be with Jon, but there has been times where Ghost just has a mind of his own. Like in Season 2 when they're north of the Wall and Ghost just kind of wanders off and we don't see him for a long time.
Either he has a mind of his own or the special effects people have a mind of their own.
That too. Another nitpick. So those catapults and trebuchets that we're talking about, they're firing this artillery barrage. And I understand why they stop when the Dothraki meet the enemy.
Why didn't they start again?
We know the charge failed. People are retreating. Like, why weren't they just continually firing? Yes. And it's not like they ran out of ammo because they specifically said cease fire.
In all aspects of this battle involving fire were not done at the appropriate time.
Okay.
In my opinion.
Well, and this gets to another point of something about the plan I didn't understand. And I don't think, like, on a first viewing, I didn't think it communicated very well. But Jon and Daenerys are up on their clifftop watching.
Yep, should just be blasting people with fire.
Well, that's what she wants to do. She sees the Dothraki get wiped out.
Yeah, but why wasn't that the plan?
Because they wanted to draw the Night King in. And that's what Jon says. He says the Night King is coming. Like, the plan is to wait. They wanted to hold the dragons back until the Night King showed up and they could go after him. That's what was always talked about. But Daenerys, it's a little flip. Jon is the one with the plan, and Daenerys is the hot-headed one. And that's why she says the dead are here, being like, I want to take out some bodies.
I'm with Daenerys on this point, but
I don't know where I'd fall, but I'm just pointing out a lot of people are complaining about the plan or a lack of plan, and that's the moment that kind of shows what the plan is. I'm saying there was a plan. It's not necessarily a bad plan. I don't know, but the point is that they had a plan and they weren't able to implement it.
Yeah. Well, I treat this entire episode sort of like I treat Skyfall, in that, like, I used to not like the last third of Skyfall because I was like, why is he going to this small place where, like, there's no technology here, so the only technology is the bad guy's technology. But whatever. It's a bad plan. And for a while, I read that, in watching it as the writers made a stupid choice. This plan makes no sense. And then, like, slowly after thinking about it for a while, I changed. It's like, no, the writers didn't make a bad choice. James Bond made a bad choice. And, like, that made me like the movie a lot more. Not necessarily because it's, like, a good decision, but it was like, this is not necessarily the writers being bad writers. This is, like, the characters making poor choices, which is, like, a much more interesting situation to be in. And I feel like that's the case with this as well.
Yeah, I feel like people get lost. They lose perspective, kind of like what you were talking about. They call it bad writing, and they kind of forget that these characters are human beings.
Yeah.
And they have their specific point of view, and they don't have that omniscient overview. It's not like they're playing StarCraft and they could see the battlefield and pick where people go. Except, technically, Bran can do that, and
Except,
I don't know why Bran.
We'll get to him. We'll get to Bran.
We'll get to Bran.
God damn it, Bran.
So why wasn't the artillery continuing to fire? Real quick, that slow-mo shot of Jorah retreating when he, like, shares that look with Tormund. There was something about it that I thought we were going to see some blue eyes. That was going to be like Jorah died and now he's a white riding back in. There was something kind of sinister about it happening that I thought we were about to see something about, like Jorah went to the other side.
Yeah. I guess that was more the, like, everything is not going according to plan look, but yes.
We have the Army of the Dead coming. The sound was terrifying. The sound design was amazing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, even the shot of... So, we talked a little bit about it being too dark, or me thinking that a little bit, and obviously the internet thinking that. One of the shots that was too dark, but I had absolutely no issue with it being too dark, is, like, the first shot when the Dothraki hit the Army of the Dead. I really liked that you could not see what happened at all.
Right, you just get that little glimpse of that featured Dothraki guy hitting that giant.
Yeah.
I think
so. Like, I think it is. It's more about the sound, like, and that kind of fear and suspense than it is about the vision.
And that's something in the making of. The director, the great Miguel Sapochnik, talked about breaking the episode into acts, and each act being its own genre. And the first act is a horror film, and it's all about the suspense and building up the dread and the terror and the horror. The wave of the Army of the Dead was terrifying. That was nightmare fuel. That was an absolute nightmare. That they weren't just, I feel like, did I talk about this last time? The rank and file soldiers coming in, that they're on top of each other, and it's just this force of nature, this wave of death. That was horrific. And just immediately into some of the most brutal gore we've seen on the show. Heads rolling, hacking and slashing. It truly was a horror film. And as that wave eventually crashed into our other heroes, I couldn't help but think, why does Jaime still have his gold hand? Like, when he first got that gold hand, I don't know if it was book only. I can't remember if they had the line in the show that he said a hook would be more practical. He knows he's going into the...
Maybe he can kind of, like, punch people with it.
Right, but... And it served him in a fight in the past. He knows he's going into the fight of his life. I can't help but think, like, why didn't he have Gendry make some kind of obsidian, like, blade that he could strap to his stump or something? Oh, and disappointed, we never got ice spiders.
No.
Never.
Many people would not be disappointed that we didn't see giant ice spiders.
Yes, I threw that out in a fun group chat we have, and a lot of people were like, I'm fine without, no, I don't need that nightmare fuel.
There was enough of that in this episode already.
But since season 1, I know there have been people out there being like, are we ever going to see ice spiders? That could be cool. And then Dragonfire, Danger Close. This is what you were talking about that you wanted from the beginning, right?
Yeah.
I like the look that Jaime has. It's kind of a look that says, hey, it feels good to be on the other side for once.
Right, yeah, because the last time he saw that was,
he was on the receiving end.
Battle. Yeah. I appreciated that there was like a lot of people had that moment. Like I think Sansa and Arya had that moment as well up on the battlements of like what is happening because like no
Right.
one has ever seen that before, which is cool.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was their first time seeing the full force of the Dragonfire. Oh, Jon makes a move for the walkers, but the storm rolls in. And I think this is when visibility for a lot of viewers came into issue. They upgraded the White Walker theme, which I like. They upgraded a lot of the regular music cues that we hear. Arya sends Sansa into the crypts, and she pays it forward with the advice, stick 'em with the pointy end.
Not put into practice.
It is, I mean, we'll
Well,
get there.
maybe.
It
We
is,
don't
but
know.
off screen.
Yeah.
That's another thing in the making of. There was, I think, some deleted stuff of Tyrion and Sansa
Okay.
getting some hits in.
That would make more sense. Than what happened.
Did you ever get a good look at Gendry's weapon? I think it's like a mace.
I
kind
thought it was a mace, but then he started using it kind of like a hammer, which would make sense. So I don't know.
Right. I mean,
But like obsidian hammer kind of I feel like that defeats the purpose. I mean, that goes into our question of how does dragonglass work?
should we get into it now?
Yeah, let's get into it. We'll take a 2-minute break and discuss
All right.
what is happening
so,
with dragonglass.
okay, Dragonglass, Obsidian. What is the deal with Dragonglass? So, and Valyrian Steel, looping that in. Because is it just automatic? Is it just if a white or a White Walker, if they get just like a pinprick?
Yeah, if
of
you like
obsidian,
nick
are they
them in
just
the
dead?
arm, are they dead? Or yeah,
Right.
they're already dead, but like, are they gone?
Right, that's the question. Or is it just because I mean you have the stab that Sam did in season 4, and one could argue that that would be a fatal blow. Certainly the one that Jon did during his demonstration, I think he like stabbed it in the head with obsidian or up the neck or something. I mean, I know the individual limbs are like still alive or undead if you cut them off. You know, like they cut off the hand and the hand's still wiggling around. So
Yeah, so like, does it have to be a killing blow? Like even the giant, which we talked about in the other episode, but not yet here. The Lyanna killing the giant, like. Yeah, she kills the giant. Like, that is a killing blow, no question. But the giant also then falls apart into pieces.
right, because it's
And
like
so, like, is it that it was a killing blow, or was it that it was obsidian? Like, if she had stabbed it anywhere else, would it also fall apart into pieces?
right, because the idea seems to be that obsidian, a strike with obsidian or Valyrian steel, sort of breaks that magical spell that's holding that dead body together.
Yeah.
But
So, we'll never know.
we will never know. And there's even a bit, again, in the making of, not to jump ahead, but where they talk about the final killing the Night King, where writer, executive producer, showrunner D.B. Weiss, or Dan Weiss, I can't remember what he goes by, he specifically says something about the Valyrian steel dagger and how there's a comment about how the Targaryens decorated their weapons and armor with dragonglass, not knowing what it was. And then he gets kind of coy. He gets kind of arrogantly coy and
doesn't
saying,
surprise me.
like, is there, like, dragonglass? He's like, we're not going to get into it. Like, it's just, I think they know the same thing we're talking about. And they're like, it doesn't matter. Let's just keep going.
All right, so back to the main thrust.
Back to it. Ed, we talked about him, that he got that, moment we predicted. Sam being our eyes into the horror of war. And I don't know if it's intended, with Sam being our everyday man viewpoint of this horrible war and battle. But that kind of goes along with, George R.R. Martin is a pacifist and really gets into the, how war is terrible. Violence is terrible. So I wonder if that's just something they decided to do, or if that goes toward my idea that the very ending will be Sam is the one writing all of this. I was disappointed in the crypts early on with Sansa, and she even said up on the ramparts with Arya, I don't want to abandon my people, when Arya was sending her away. And then she goes down to the crypts, and there's like this shot of these, common people, and Sansa just kind of turns her back on them. And it's like, I'm going to talk with Tyrion. I was kind of hoping for a moment like in Blackwater, where she was able, like, especially after Cersei left, she was able to, like, keep morale up. They were, like, singing hymns and stuff. Like, she was keeping people's spirits up. And I was kind of hoping to see her be a leader in the crypts, not necessarily singing hymns and being all
Yeah.
jolly, because that's not Sansa anymore, but something.
I was thinking that it was interesting to me, like, literally at that point when she comes down into the crypt and doesn't say anything, in my mind I was like, if this was a modern movie, they'd be like, oh, this place looks nice, like some sort of joke or something to lighten the mood. And like, yeah, there wasn't any of that. It was just like, yeah, this sucks, well, I guess I'll go talk to the other royal person, or not royal, but
Yeah,
noble
exactly.
person.
It seemed, classist a little bit.
Yeah.
She looked at those people and was like, nah, I don't want to talk to them.
Yeah.
John clipping some trees on his dragon.
He couldn't see either.
He couldn't see either. I hope he got the insurance on that dragon. And then a collision with Dany. Oh, I forgot to bring it up. When he is meeting with Daenerys on the cliff top, there's some, what looks like some animosity between the dragons. They're kind of irritable with each other.
Oh,
and
I
then
did
again,
not notice that. That's interesting.
it's like a little kind of prickly feeling. And then with them colliding later on, I wonder if that's supposed to be a visual representation of the brooding conflict between Daenerys and Jon. It's complicated relationship status. Oh, I would like to say about the battle, for everyone complaining about it and how nothing made sense, I loved seeing the Unsullied in action. Because I feel like this is the first time we've seen them work in formation in a pitched battle. Like, just the way, like, their synchronization,
Yeah.
their discipline, the way they would kind of, like, step in time with each other. And you have people, like, retreating, and they kind of, like, close the gaps. We never got to see them, like, rotate a man, like, in that phalanx formation. Where, like, you'd rotate the front line back.
Right.
So I feel like most of the time with the Unsullied, they've been, like, window dressing.
Yeah.
And there was the Siege of Casterly Rock, but, I mean, that's not exactly the Unsullied in their prime. This is their prime, an open pitched battle.
Unfortunately, it was in theory in their prime, but the enemy was not behaving like they would have expected.
Right, and that's with everything. It's like how do you defend against an army of the dead like this?
Well, so one thing I wanted to bring up: if you've read World War Z, obviously, if
yes,
you've
I
seen the
have.
movie, there are some parallels between the Army of the Dead there and the waves of zombies. But in the book, like, a lot of the book is super interesting because it's about how typical warfare techniques do not work.
Right.
But they still, prepared for that. Like in the case of World War Z, they're using, shock and awe tactics and these explosions and stuff that don't work. And in the case of this, like, they were preparing for an army that was not an army of the dead, and so, like, they prepared poorly. Which again, I think that is more interesting than it could have been almost.
Yeah, I mean, I think they did as best as the characters could do. Because I think they understood, clearly they understood the whites will just sweep over the castle like a wave. So that's why they had the obsidian spikes, like, all over the walls.
Yeah.
I mean, I really felt it, it's just nonstop. Like, if they were human, they would have been demoralized. Like, you would have been able to, like, feel the momentum turn. It's just this never-ending wave of the dead. So, okay, the plan was to signal Daenerys to light the trench. They can't see through the storm. And I've seen this comment a few times. People were like, there's a horn that we've seen them use at Winterfell. Like, why don't they use the horn? It's like every shot of Daenerys up there in the storm, it's like she can't hear anything.
Yeah, it's not just vision. Yeah, she can.
How is she going to hear a horn from down there? Oh, but nitpick. My problem, though, with this, Jon is right there somewhere. He's just sitting at Winterfell with his dragon. And jumping ahead, Bran, is doing his reconnaissance thing with the ravens. I don't know why they didn't have him doing that from the beginning and being able to give information to people.
You know why they didn't have him doing that from the beginning? Because he never came out of the warging. He never told anyone anything. He was just like, I'm these ravens for the entire battle. I'm gonna watch stuff and be totally useless.
Yeah, I wish he could have been utilized, because he did last season. He spied on the Army of the Dead.
Yeah.
And he
But
told
it was
the
just like,
Maester,
I
"Send
need to go, and then he was ravens, and then he never came out of being ravens. So, like, what was his purpose? What was his goal?
Well, I don't know about purpose, but I have an idea for the very end of something that he might have seen. But we'll get to that later. But I wish he could have been utilized,
Yeah.
for sure. And that would have been perfect. Or just as they're yelling about light the trench, I'm not sure where John was exactly perched with Rhaegal, but he was there at Winterfell. Someone get word to John and have him
Yeah.
swoop in and light the trench. Because there's even a shot where he sees the trench lighting up and he's there on top of the wall. But Melisandre, with her second hero moment, lighting the trench. What a great sequence, though. And I like that moment we were talking about, her confidence, but it's almost like a look like, as you know, they're slaying whites right next to her on either side of her. She gives a look that's almost like, guys, keep it down. I'm trying to work here.
Yeah, I guess so in my mind, I was building another story for Melisandre, which could have ended the way her story ended, and I feel like it would have been better in my mind. And this is, obviously speculation, but she was like mostly confident about the lighting the swords on fire, but like it took a little bit longer than it was supposed to. And then she was, oh, well, Lord of Light, I can build the fire, all that stuff. She had some worries in the trench and like almost sort of was scared that she was going to die and not be able to light the trench on fire. I thought this was a slow, like, this is the last of her magic. Her magic is over now. Like this was her last gasp, and like that was why she served her purpose and then was like, okay, I'm done. Like I can't do anything anymore. I'm going to take this jewel off and die. Whereas it was kind of just like, well, everything looks fine. I'm going to go die now. Like it didn't really follow that path as much as I wanted it to.
That's an interesting idea, but I do like that emotional resignation at the end. Like, my purpose is done, so I'm just going to fade away now.
Yeah. I guess just like her whole thing has always been like, she has had issues with like knowing whether or not she's doing the right thing with the Lord of the Light and seeing if, seeing the prophecies correctly or incorrectly and having that kind of crisis of faith. And I feel like it should have come to a head a little bit more.
Well, I mean, that certainly happened in season 6 when she was trying to resurrect John. Like, she was unsure about it. She was like having a crisis of faith, and she was certainly not sure if it was going to work. And then after it did, she was like, this is it. We talked in our chat a little bit about the Azor Ahai prophecy and whatnot. Do you almost think that she is supposed to be Azor Ahai? One of those things like her whole life has been to look for Azor Ahai and to support and propel the whole Azor Ahai thing, and then sort of realizing in the end, like, no, I was Azor Ahai the whole time. I don't know. I'm just thinking about this now, throwing that out there.
Yeah, it could be.
I mean, we don't know how long she's been alive. I've seen some estimations, speculation, like 600 plus years, something like that. So, like, she's ready to die.
Yeah.
She's ready to be done. And so much of her life has been about this one moment. So I like that emotional resignation, that it's like, my time is done now, and now I rest. But here and now, I love, love, love that shot of the fire going up, and the music's amazing. You see the reflection of the fire in her eyes. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
But one person who doesn't think it's beautiful is the Hound. you get fire, you get dead people, and that kind of gives him a crisis. But then we're back into the crypts, and here's another... Well, this is a little bit more than a nitpick. This is a nitpick plus. Nitpick extra. Tyrion wants to help. He's miffed about being sent away into the crypts. And he even says specifically that if he were out there, that maybe he would see something that someone else doesn't see. But do you know the line I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Because then Varys gives him a hard time, and he's like, I was the one who, had the idea for the Mudgate at that time, and blah, blah, blah. And Tyrion specifically says, if I were up there, I might see something that someone else doesn't see. And Varys in that same scene mentions, like, at least we're already in a crypt. I was hoping for him to go, like, wait a second.
Right.
I wanted Tyrion to get the idea, like, we're fighting an enemy that raises the dead, and we're around all these dead people. It was the perfect opportunity for Tyrion to have a moment.
As we've been saying, though, he's been pretty bad the past couple seasons at his cleverness.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
But that was such a prime moment for him to contribute. It feels like they were setting it up. Maybe it was like in the writer's subconscious. They didn't even realize it, that was the moment that was supposed to happen.
Yeah. Just jumping ahead slightly on the crypt theme. When all the bodies start coming out, like, they're scrabbling through stone. Someone should have been like, okay, kill them immediately now before they get out, before they start killing, and just, like, run around to all the crypts and just, like, stab them in the head with their dragon glass. Like, right? Like, be organized, people, just a little bit.
Yeah, and that's something he could have done.
Like, because it would have been fine. They were scrabbling through stone. It was going to take them, like, 5 minutes to get out. Like...
Said he just had little Sam there screaming. And
Yeah.
Nobody's doing anything. I do like that Tyrion and Sansa talk about their relationship, because I do hope that they end up together.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that.
Missandei gets a little butthurt
Yeah,
over
that was weird.
Sansa's comment.
I did not like that line. I was like, she shouldn't... Like, this doesn't really make sense, but...
But the thing I do like about that moment is Tyrion gives her this look that's like, you cockblocker. You ruined the moment. Oh, I want to say I am glad there was no personal vendetta shot or moment. You know what I mean? Where it's like we would feature like a particular white.
Oh, right, yeah.
Like when Ed was killed early on and Sam ran away, I kept waiting for that white to like show up again in Sam's face, and then Sam has to kill him.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad they never did any of that kind of business, any kind of personal, apart from the Night King, of course, but any kind of personal one-on-one in this hectic, insane, crazy chaos.
Now, the one thing that some people had thought about was, like, are we going to see, I think we talked about this, our favorite characters come back as the dead. And I guess technically we did, but even those that did... Like, no one had to fight them ever. They were just awake again.
Correct.
Which was interesting. And I think that's a fine choice. I'm kind of okay with that. But
And I'm certainly okay that we did not see Hodor show up. I mean, I think that would have broke me. That would have broke me. The Hound is properly AFK. Arya's badass moment. And we found out what her spear was all about.
yes, it was just 2 daggers and or 1 spear. Which I'm...
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm totally fine. Like, when that happened, when she first split it apart, I was like, oh, okay. I want to refer back to the diagram, because that joint was certainly not in the middle of that staff.
Not to scale.
Not to scale.
You know how graphs have that little, like, zigzag when they, like, skip a bunch of bars? There was that in the middle. You just couldn't see that.
But then we get into a dance of dragons. A nice dragon battle. Our first full-on dragon-on-dragon action. And I'm going to take a wild guess that you did not like the look of it.
No, I was actually mostly okay with it, because they did what they did in Jurassic Park, and they, like, it was windy, and it was snowy, and it was hard to see, and therefore the bad parts of the effects were hidden better. So I liked it. There are some good maneuvers in there. The ice dragon, like, bolting up from the bottom, which is not always what you would expect out of the clouds. It was good.
So, hey, we picked up this conversation on another day. Just throwing that out there in case there's any drastic changes in audio quality, or if we might repeat some information.
To be fair, I probably repeat even within the same day, so who knows?
I was talking before about each sort of act of the episode being broken up into different genres, and how the first act, like a suspense, thriller, monster movie, I should say.
Right.
It does have like a Jaws type of feel in terms of the things that you don't see but you're hearing. And anyway, but Arya then sneaking around the library, and now we're into a horror section. And this is another nitpick. I'm going to be tracking my nitpicks. Why did she go into that library in the first place?
I was wondering that too, because she like sees the door. I guess she is trying to find a safe place to sort of recover, and was the door closed? There was definitely a shot of her looking at the door, and I don't remember.
But she hears something. She hears
Is it that she hears it?
She hears like a rattle or a clang. She hears something inside the library, and it's kind of like that horror movie thing of like, I heard a sound, I have to go investigate what it is. But it's like,
to be fair, she's kind of concussed at this point.
True.
But yes, it was a little odd. I sort of took it as her trying to find a place to sort of recover, but yeah, now that you say that, it doesn't make as much sense.
I hoped on a rewatch I would see that the door that she exited was on the other side, and that it's like wherever she was trying to get to was through the library.
Yeah, it was very unclear. I was wondering that as well.
But on that rewatch, I was looking for it. I'm pretty sure she leaves the way she came.
Well, there also are two doors on that side, so I don't know. Like, because as soon as she leaves, they burst out not just that door, but and the other door. So like, there's a lot.
Well, that's a different direction. That's like another part of the castle.
Is it? Okay.
And that's another thing that made the sequence. Which, don't get me wrong, it was a great sequence, incredibly well done. But the whole time I'm thinking, why though? And then what you're talking about, it's like the whites come crashing through the other side, and so it's like, so what was the point of all that in the end? I don't know. It's a conflicted feeling, I guess, the way a lot of people feel about the episode in general, where it's like there's a lot of great stuff in there, but it's like, does it all make sense?
Something I was going to say as just a general impression about this episode was that to me, it sort of felt like a Christopher Nolan movie in that while I was watching it, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very good. I was like super into it and kind of, connected with all the characters and everything that was happening. And then as soon as I started thinking about it afterwards, I was like, but wait, this, and but wait, that. And like, it sort of falls apart. Not in a way necessarily that I, don't enjoy it anymore, but it just like, there's a lot more.
It lingers with
questions. Yeah, that linger.
Yeah, I believe the term is fridge questions. They call it, because the idea is it's like you go see a movie and you enjoy it, like you said, Christopher Nolan movie, and you get home, you go into the fridge, you grab a beer, and you're like, but wait, why did Arya have to go into the library? What was that about? Yeah, fridge questions, things that kind of pop up later and after the fact.
I like that.
Yeah, I heard that from, I think it was the director of Silence of the Lambs talking about it, and I can't remember what part it was, but it was either the writer or editor, somebody had some question like, wait, why is she doing this thing? He's like, don't worry about it. That's a fridge question. And again, I like the sequence. Incredibly well done. I was into it, the sneaking around, especially that moment where she stabs the girl white in the throat. At first I thought it was like an actual girl that was also hiding. It was like a mistake. Thought she was a little too quick on the trigger on that one. But there was the bit where she slides underneath the table to hide. And I'm like, there's no way the movement we saw on camera was that silent. Especially when her blood drips, and that's what gives her away, is that sound of the blood drop.
Yeah, fair enough.
I'm like, you're telling me that scoot underneath the table was silent, but it's the blood drop?
She is a master assassin, okay?
Well, then, vindication, in the making of, they have that shot, behind the scenes angle of it. So, I mean, I'll cut it in right here. Bing.
Oh my god, you're so scary.
It's like, so it's just as loud as you would expect it to be, her like shuffling underneath the table. Like you said, it's like a Christopher Nolan thing. Well, another Tyrion thing, I don't know if I need to get into it, but that's another thing from the making of, is that they talk about being in the crypt, and Peter Dinklage himself is like, nobody thought
of that. He's bringing all the dead people back to life, and they put the women and children in a crypt with all the dead people. So, Tyrion is smart, but I guess not that smart.
That's what I'm saying. That would have been a perfect opportunity for him to show his worth. You had something?
I did appreciate, though, that the whites did never breach the door. Like, yeah, they came out of the tombs, but, like, if that part wasn't an issue, like, the crypts being the safest place weirdly made sense. Because, like, the door did stay closed.
It was a sturdy door. Which, side note, I can't remember if I mentioned it before, It's like that front gate of Winterfell has been destroyed by now 2 giants. It's like whoever's job it is to make that door, that gate. Well, A, he's probably dead twice, but B, if he's still alive, he's got to be pissed. He's like, how many times in my life do I have to replace this friggin' door?
And it's not like he can make a giant-proof door. Like, that's not his fault, you know? I bet people get mad at him, and he's like, but I made the door the best that we could. It's just like, you know, can't have giant-proof doors. And then
it's like every time a giant comes into Winterfell, the giant dies. So it's not like there's a giant laying around that I could test the durability of the door. I don't know.
To be fair, actually, they do have friendly... Or I don't know. Do they still have friendly giants?
No, yeah, there was just one, and he was the first one we saw crash into Winterfell, and then he died immediately.
I thought there was another one for some reason, but I guess not. Oh, well.
I mean, before, but they died in the Battle at the Wall, and then one was the last one left. Winterfell is becoming like Professor X's mansion, the X-Men mansion from the comics, where it's just destroyed over and over again. There's an actual, I don't know if you ever saw it, there's an actual, Marvel has like a formula timeline that it's like this amount of time in the real world equals this amount of time in the Marvel universe.
Oh, yeah?
And people have been able to take that and go through the X-Men comics, and so it's like off of that, something like in 1 year, the X-Men mansion was destroyed like 7 times in 1 year. Destroyed and rebuilt, destroyed and rebuilt. A Hound and Beric sneaking and creeping through the Winterfell halls, and they run into Arya with her horde, and Beric does this clutch flaming sword throw into a white. And remember this, because this is going to come up later in another nitpick that I'm going to have. And they run into Melisandre in, I think they're in like the Great Hall of Winterfell.
Yes, I believe so.
Again, I enjoyed everything, but in my head I was thinking, like, shouldn't there be like more people, like more soldiers, like huddled in a corner or something? Again, that little minor nitpick, like I almost didn't bring it up. But it's like, you'd think that in terms of the failing lines of defense into Winterfell, that would be a room where you would have like soldiers barricading doors and trying to like hold back the army of the dead, is the Great Hall. That is like the most nitpicky of nitpicks. Don't get me wrong, I'm just throwing that out there. The entire reason the Lord of Light, if the Lord of Light is even real, the implication, or Melisandre just says, the purpose was to save Arya. And
I wonder why.
But wonderful callback to Syrio Forel, Season 1. What do we say to the God of Death? Not today. And this is something else I'm going to get into when we get to the very end. And then we're in the Godswood. Theon and his crew gets ready. And here's another thing with what are the rules of Dragonglass and Valyrian Steel? Because he says, make every shot count. It's like, does it need to, though? I mean, obviously you need to hit a target, but it's not like you need a kill shot every time, because...
Well, I think they were mostly using the flaming arrows, which I had to assume did not have Dragonglass, but maybe they also had Dragonglass. I don't know.
I couldn't tell. We'll have to get, like, a zoom in, analyze, enhance on their arrows. But maybe you're right. Maybe they just couldn't make enough obsidian arrows, and so the obsidian arrows had to go to the front line, and you guys just have flaming arrows.
I mean, even with the fire, there's that question, right? Like, these people, if you just shot them with a regular arrow, they would not die. However, if you shoot them with a arrow that's on fire, but it doesn't really catch them on fire, it's just the arrow that's on fire, then they do die. So, questions.
It's not like they touch fire and they're like, oh no. It's like they have to burn.
Yeah, but clearly not.
It's a shame they couldn't have fit the dragons with some obsidian.
Or like on their claws or something?
Like on their claws, if in their teeth, if possible.
That'd be cool.
They haven't done it on the show, but I think it was for that history book they threw together. It's like the World of Ice and Fire. There's a painting of Aegon the Conqueror, and his dragon has like armor and like a proper saddle. It has stuff.
Yeah.
So I wonder if we will. We probably won't, but it'd be nice to be able to see like a dragon outfitted with stuff.
Yeah. The bareback riding, that's a lot too. Like, it would probably be painful. I don't know.
We don't really have a clear detail of how that works.
Yeah.
There was the one opportunity to get into it in episode 1, but they clearly just brushed over that. And then Daenerys with Dracarys, and we find the answer: does Dragonfire work on the Night King?
So this was a nitpick I had. I'm totally fine with him not dying because of Dragonfire, but like he could at least be, a little bit burnt or singed or something. Like the fact that it had literally no effect also on his clothes, that was a little odd to me. Like it would be kind of cool if he was still there, but like his armor was, glowing red hot.
Yeah,
Something
that
like
could have
that.
been
Like there's some
interesting.
cool opportunities there that they did not take. But anyway.
I mean, it was clearly a, what's cooler than cool? Ice cold. Type of thing. But I do love that shot of him smirking smugly through the flames. And when he got that ice spear ready, I thought, here we go. Drogon's gonna die. The death of the dragons as I predicted. But nope. Narrow miss. And I would say the walkers weren't doing anything. They're commanding the army of the dead. So if they were to go in and risk themselves and then they get hit by,
I guess
like,
they have the right to stay in safety, in relative safety.
Right. Hey, I would love to see White Walkers in there tearing things up, but it makes sense to me that we saw that once and the guy died again and a guy died. And they're like, all right, let's hang back. Let's hang back and just let our dead army of 1 million whites do our work for us.
Do they ever talk to each other, or is it all like telepathy?
That's a difference. That's in the books. They kind of have their own language that they seem to speak and kind of make jokes and whatnot.
Yeah,
like in
'cause
that very.
It's definitely like obviously the Night King never says anything, but like we don't know. They could have meetings. They're like, okay, for this battle, let's not say a word, and it's gonna be scary. They're gonna be so freaked out, they're gonna surrender.
Right, and
then
so
like
I
once
guess-
they did it once, they were like, well, we can't talk now. We've done it. We did it so many times.
and that's the salty fan complaint that they wanted something more from the White Walkers, but the show kind of early on established like, no, this is it for the White Walkers. It's just one note, and this is it. And honestly, from like episode 1 of the entire series, the Walkers were different from how they are in the books. So
Yeah.
it's something I'm thinking about exploring in a longer solo nerdy video essay.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Oh, I heard someone say that because the Night King survived the Dragonfire, that they thought the Night King was Targaryen. So real quickly, I'll remind people, we saw the Night King's origin. He was made the Night King by the Children of the Forest, but he's clearly not a Targaryen. But regardless of features, that was thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, before the Targaryens were even a thought in Westeros. And
A twinkle in the Westeros's eye.
yeah, if you want to get into deep history, like Valyria might not have even been a thing yet. This is all stuff that we'll get in the spin-off prequel series, The Long Night. If there's any connection, he could be a Stark. So throw that out there for you.
That's why he looks so much like Bran.
Yeah, the whole Bran is the Night King theory.
Yeah.
But also, then the other flip side of the coin, Targaryens are not immune to fire. Well, first of all, dragon fire is a bit more intense than just regular fire. It's been established in the series, this is not a book-only thing, that dragon fire is a lot more intense than regular fire. When they go to Harrenhal, and Gendry's like, what kind of fire melts stone? And he's like, dragon fire. But Targaryens are not immune to fire. There's more to be revealed in the books, but there just seems to be something special about Daenerys in the show, that she has a particular heat tolerance. Because we've seen 4 Targaryens, 3 Targaryens die or get burned. Viserys, Jon got burned. And, Aemon's body was burned, but I don't know if that counts. He was already dead. So yeah, Targaryens are not immune to fire. Okay, so Jon is chasing down the Night King. I was very worried that this was going to turn into a mano-y-mano showdown Sunday, 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 Jon Snow versus the Night King. I was like, if this comes down to just like, and that's another salty fan thing that's out there. So many people wanted that.
Yeah.
And they feel that the series was building up to that. And I will give them, there were those, lingering looks between the two of them every now and then. So I can understand. I can empathize where that's coming from. But looking at the series as a whole, and you think that this should all come down to like this one battle between good and evil. You know what I mean? It's like we watching the same show. So I was very glad to see the Night King raise his hands and the dead start to, and I did a big like, oh boy. That might be my favorite moment of the episode.
It was pretty good. Then we see all of our friends come back to life, and everything is happy, and the episode ends there.
I did get really bummed when Ed opened his eyes, and the show knew what it was doing, that it would affect people like me. There was just something about Ed becoming a member of the Army of the Dead that, it was like almost on the level that if Hodor were to show up.
Yeah. At least we didn't have to see him, destroying someone we liked. Because that would be, I could see them doing that very easily.
Yeah, kind of like what I was talking about before. Like, I was really glad that there were no, like, personal grudge matches. Like, Sam running into that same white that killed Ed being chased through Winterfell or something silly like that.
But
and
you could also easily see, like, dead Ed, going after Sam, and Sam having to kill Ed, like something like that.
Here's the moment where I said, remember my thing about Beric with that clutch move of throwing the sword. If only Beric could have taught that move to Jon Snow, there is a perfect opportunity for it.
Yeah, that's true.
He's running and the dead are rising. Just throw your sword, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a risk, but...
I don't know, the Night King has some pretty good reactions, but yeah, I guess one chance would be better than none.
All right, and then maybe my favorite shot of the whole episode. I've been keeping track of a couple of shots that I liked, but this might be my favorite shot. The White Walkers entering Winterfell. The boys are back in town. But just that orange haze and the music and the glow, the subtle glow from their eyes. I love that shot. And then the crypt. The little hands start here we go. Nobody thought of it. Like Tyrion said, no one thought of it. Nobody.
And was there really no one, like, even disregarding the fact that the dead were coming back to life, was there really no one in the crypt? Like, they didn't have any soldiers down there?
Right.
It seems like a terrible choice.
It's like they knew those doors would last. They'd be like, hey, listen, we didn't get that guy that makes the front gate that the Giants get. Like, this one's built by, like, the real dude that knows what's up.
Not the apprentice door maker. I don't know why they gave the big door to the apprentice, but it seemed like a good idea at the time. This is the spin-off show I really want to see.
And then my note here is just, what is Bran doing?
Yeah.
So I guess it was probably the shot that's just going around him with the Ironborn fighting. I think we talked about this already.
If he was using the Ravens to scout for people, if he was telling people that information, all for it. But he didn't do any of that. He was just like, well, I'm going to watch this movie in VR. And like, what the hell, Bran?
I'm holding out the benefit of the doubt. I mean, I do have something about the very end to say about Bran. But I'm holding out for the benefit of the doubt that we might get, well, A, that he does something more in the future, or B, we'll learn after the fact something he was doing during the battle.
Yeah.
But
I certainly hope so.
I'm not holding my breath. He's literally a god. He could have been, like you said, coordinating, recon, getting messages back and forth. How interesting would it have been if, like, someone's fighting, like you have Sam and Ed on the front lines, and then Ed's eyes roll white, and he goes, "We need to fall back," and it like comes back, and he's like, "Whoa, what was that?" It's like Bran like went into his head to like deliver a message or something.
Yeah, that'd be very cool.
But nobody cares what I have to say. Whatever.
D&D.
Drogon. Okay, so Daenerys flies in. She saves Jon from the Whites that he's getting surrounded by. Bran's in trouble. Jon runs, and then Daenerys just hangs out on the ground with Drogon. She doesn't
Again.
fly back into the air.
As I said before, every single decision about a dragon in this episode was very poorly done.
That was in one of those little silly videos we watch where it's like, why isn't she, just raining down dragonfire? It's like, to be fair, we don't see like the little status bars. It's not a video game, so we don't know like what their stamina level is at when they're...
Yeah. Well, I don't know how their fire generation goes. Like,
Right. And they have been flying around a lot.
that's true.
Maybe they're tired. I don't know. But... And I do give them the benefit of the doubt of that original plan, that they were intended to hold back, to not just be raining down fire constantly, because they wanted to lure the Night King in and then fly after them. But that plan went to hell right away. Drogon lingers on the ground. He's getting swarmed by the whites. A, I don't know why Daenerys lingers. B, I don't know why, when they know it is a problem, why they still linger. C, he's getting stabbed a bunch of times. Was that even C? I can't remember.
Yeah, that was C. You're good.
Okay. Getting stabbed a bunch of times, and I mean, I guess this is another nitpick because, again, we don't know the details, but the only time we've seen Drogon be injured, it was like something pretty serious. It was a spear in season 5, that scorpion. But I mean, I think the implication has been that Dragon's hide is really, really tough.
Yeah.
And now he's getting stabbed by, 100-year-old rusty wildling cheap steel, It's like, and he's like whimpering and yelling, and it's like, would that really cause damage? Would that really cause damage?
Well, I mean, as you said, he does end up shaking it off and seems kind of okay at the end, so...
He does shake it off. He's okay at the end, but yeah, I was just sitting in my seat like, what is happening? And before, with the ice javelin coming to you, Winter Olympics, I was like, here we go, Drogon's gonna die. So I was in mind, I thought Drogon was gonna die. So when he was swarmed by the whites, I was like, not like this.
Yeah.
Is this how Drogon's gonna die? This would be so dumb. Jon fighting through the Winterfell courtyard. So many great individual moments. The one that kind of broke me was when Sam is getting overwhelmed and Jon sees it, but he's like, I have to go do this thing.
Oh, yeah, I liked that moment. There was actually a couple of moments somewhat similar to that, which I appreciated. Because, like, that is what is going to happen, what would happen, sort of. Like, you have to focus on what you're doing, and, like, they can take care of themselves, hopefully.
And it's like, if they can't take care of themselves, it's like, honestly, it doesn't matter. He has to go save the world.
Yeah.
And I felt it.
Yeah.
I felt it. As a fan, that one moment kind of said it all for the show. That kind of encapsulated the weight of everything.
Yeah.
So all the arguments of, like, why does this matter? What's going on? Like, I understood the stakes. And regardless of how much we wanted Bran to die, I was then on board with Jon and his mission. Here is one thing. Okay, Tyrion gets 1 point. And this is something super, super subtle. I don't think this is reading too much into things. I don't think this is like a fan retcon. I think this is the intention. Okay? So 1 point for Tyrion and his intelligence. When he realizes the dead are rising in the crypts, he grabs Sansa and says, "Come on!" And where do they go? Where are they hiding?
Behind some sort of coffin?
Yes. You're not wrong. And that coffin, that, what do you call it? That tomb belongs to Ned Stark. Tyrion knows that only the bones were shipped back to Winterfell. Because he was in King's Landing. He was the one that sent them as a gesture of goodwill. He gave them to Littlefinger to send off. So Tyrion has firsthand knowledge of what that particular tomb, that crypt is. So he understands the chaos that's happening, and immediately he knows what could be the safest place in the crypt would be Ned Stark's alcove. All right. Tyrion, you've been fucking up. You're not smart lately. I wish you could have been a little more proactive, but you get a clap on the back for that, buddy. Good on you. Oh, but Tyrion gives her a nice kiss on the hand. That gives me hope for their relationship.
So you're saying there's a chance?
You're saying there's a chance. Oh, what if that's how like the next episode picks up with Tyrion walking up to her and being like, "Hey, so you and me, right?" And she's like, "Listen, I thought we were gonna die, you know."
Oh shoot!
I don't know, I was trying to think of somebody else that's out there, but
She can't go back to Theon.
Theon, and then even then, I mean, is she hanging out with Missandei too much? It's like she's like, "Listen, the way to go is a guy that doesn't have junk, because it's great." They're never nagging you for sex. You just get to hang out with your best friend.
They're not hanging though.
Oh, Jon with the ice dragon. Again, it doesn't take much to kill a white. Jon, get with that Beric sword throw program. Throw the
I thought he was
sword.
going to, because the dragon has its mouth open so much. I was like, he's going to throw a sword in, or he's going to dive in and stab it in the mouth, or something, and none of that happened.
Well, there was a couple of times I felt like he could have run past Rhaegal. No, sorry, Viserion.
Well, there's the other theory of why he didn't, but I don't think that's true.
Oh, okay. So there's a fun fan theory sort of retconning that moment of Jon standing up with the dragon and yelling. The fun fan theory is that he saw Arya and is acting to distract the dragon, and he's yelling, "Go." But no, I don't think that's the intention at all. Do you agree or disagree?
I think I agree as well. I mean, with you, not with the theory.
It's a fun kind of retcon thing. And hey, I have the Tyrion thinking ahead of time about stuff. So who am I to judge of someone else's fan theory to reinterpret what's on the screen? But I'll say there's a little more evidence on screen for my theory, but with Tyrion. Anyway, it's not a competition. Me and unknown internet people.
It's always a competition on the internet.
All right, and then goodbye, Theon.
Yeah.
He gave it his best. He gave it his all. And again, allegedly Alice Karstark was in there somewhere, unless she was meant to like walk them to the God's Wood and then she went to the crypt. Because I'm telling you, in the beginning of the episode, she's walking with them. Whatever. Who cares about Alice Karstark? But Theon, people really hated Theon early on in the series. And I always felt really bad for Theon. Season 2 on. His whole story, his whole arc, I felt was, even before he got castrated, I already thought it was very tragic. His family story, you know, when we meet Theon, we get to know him. He's very proud of his family and where he comes from. And then he finally gets to go home, and they want nothing to do with him. And he's kind of torn between the two. He feels like he doesn't belong anywhere. And so he decides to give it a go with his family, and just everything goes wrong. He just loses himself. And you have that story of redemption. So, in terms of arcs in the show, I'm tempted to say Theon might have like the best arc in Game of Thrones.
So, you are probably the best person to ask about this. I thought I remembered from some trailer or something, or possibly this did happen and I just forgot it. Like it happened in some other episode. But I thought there was a conversation where someone told Theon, like, "You're a Greyjoy and a Stark," like recently.
Yeah, it was last season. It was Jon.
Was it last season? Okay.
Yeah, I think it might have been the finale.
Okay, so he did have
season 7.
that moment at least.
Yeah, it was a really. I can't remember what Theon said to Jon, but Jon says something like, I think Theon says something about like how he knows he can't ask for forgiveness. He can't be forgiven for the things he's done. I think he says some version of what I said in terms of like feeling like he doesn't belong. Something. But then Jon said, the moment I do remember is Jon says, "It's not my place to forgive you for some of the things that you've done, but for the ones that I can, I do forgive you." And he's like, "And you don't have to choose. You are both a Stark and a Greyjoy." He says something like, "There's as much of my father in you as there is in me, or something like that.
Which is true. We now know.
Which is true. Ned was like an uncle to Theon. He was. And now we have Bran and the Night King. We're at the end. I think for the most part what Bran was doing was basically just watching everything that was going on everywhere. So I think he knows by the time he opens his eyes, as it were, to stare at the Night King, I think he knows Arya's on her way. Arya's doing her thing.
Oh, interesting.
A point of evidence for me to that is as they're doing that little stare down, his eye line shifts. It's like he's looking up at the Night King, and then very subtly his eye line kind of shifts down a bit. And that's when the Night King does his little, like, dog turn head move,
Yeah.
Like, huh? It's almost like he's saying, you think I'm going to fall for that? Made you look type move. And love that shot of the White Walker feeling the breeze.
Oh, yeah, that was cool.
And that little glance. And just that shot of the Night King's hand reaching for the weapon, Arya coming out of the nowhere. I love that shot because it serves two purposes. Like, it's not when you're seeing the hand move for the weapon. Like sometimes there'll be like a frame of a shot, but it's framed in a way where you expect, okay, so it's framed like this. There's all this awkward space here, so something's gonna happen.
Right.
It wasn't like that. It was a shot that made sense, but they had the framing for Arya to be. It was magnifique. A lot of people are complaining about it. I feel like it feels right from what we know about Game of Thrones, because we are expecting and anticipating the absolute worst to happen.
Yeah.
I think that's why people have the plot armor criticisms, because they've come to expect everyone to die.
Right.
But like for this moment, I sat in my seat thinking, she is dead. That's it. So when that dagger move happened, hey, it was a twist to me.
Yeah.
And it blew my mind, and I loved it. So I feel like it's like this arc of expectations across the whole series. I saw a couple of comments of people saying that, so Arya's the one that kills the Night King. Like, who cares? It's like they picked somebody at random, right? It's like they were just looking for the most unexpected person to kill the Night King. Her whole story in Game of Thrones has been about death.
Yeah.
Again, the serial Pharrell. What do we say to the god of death? Not today. She joins a literal death cult where they give the gift of death. Her whole thing is about death. And now she jumps out of nowhere and kills the literal embodiment of death.
Although, I will say, I mean, I am with you, but thinking about giving the gift of death, right? Like, I mean, we saw this guy be created into the Night King. It didn't seem like he wanted to. So
Yes,
she's
that's another
releasing
point
him
that I
from
have.
that.
And that's why I think he is so hell-bent on going against Bran. They have the thing about, like, Bran is the keeper of memory, and he wants to wipe out all humanity and all memory of humanity. And that makes sense, yes, but I think there's a little extra, like when he kills the first three-eyed raven that we come to know, he has that stare, that look, and that's all the Night King does is stare, but this stare is extra, and he gives the same to Bran. And I feel resentment behind it, because I think the three-eyed raven is like a representation of the magic of the Children of the Forest.
Yeah.
And so yes, he has his mission, but I think like that's part of it that's like really personal to him, because I don't think he enjoys being the Night King.
Yeah.
Sorry, I know I kind of repeated what you said and just said it longer, but then that move though, oh yeah, I yelled when she did that move. I like afterward I was like, oh, I hope my neighbors aren't like worried about me or something, because I yelled very loud. A European watching soccer. That's how I yelled. Drogon mourns with Daenerys over Jorah. And that's another salty fan criticism that grinds my gears. I don't know why I'm getting so fired up about this. Another criticism you see is that nobody like important died. Like none of the big characters died. It's like Jorah's a big character.
Yeah, Jorah's pretty big.
He was one of my favorite characters
Theon's
out of
pretty
the gate.
big. Like, yeah.
I can understand people not caring about Theon. He's got a complicated history with the show. But Jorah. Who didn't love Jorah? I think you had something you really wanted to get into about Melisandre.
Yeah, well, I think I basically said it last time. The way they framed her death, of her walking off into the, snow and taking off her magical amulet and dying, like, there wasn't enough context to it, I felt. And there was that story that I thought they were building with her, and they, like, never quite got there, of her magic sort of deserting her, or like this being the last gasp of it, and like now her magic has run out, so there's no reason for her to be there anymore, or she just sort of, even the magic of the necklace would like die, like she uses that somehow to start the fire in the trenches or something. But
yeah, the light in the ruby goes out.
Yeah, but only when she takes it off.
Did it go out the first time when she took it off?
I don't remember.
But here
it was just like an afterthought. She was like, well, okay, seems like a good enough time to die as any. Like,
yeah.
There was no sort of reasoning for it, and I didn't get that. Because, like, there was such an opportunity to, like, she had trouble with the magic when she was lighting the trench. She goes into the hall and, like, gives her last sort of, piece of advice to Arya, because she can't do anything other than talk right now because, like, her magic has left her. And then she like, goes and dies. There's this story that could have happened, and it didn't.
But I like the idea that it's her being her choice, being like, I'm done.
I mean, I guess she's pretty old, so maybe.
She's very old. Same thing we were saying about the Night King. She's been through a lot, and wasn't necessarily her choice, a lot of the stuff. And personally, so again, I'm conflicted because I like the execution of it. I like the idea of it, the visual of it, beautiful. But personally, I kind of wanted the fulfillment of Jon executing her. Because he said, if you ever come back to the north, I'll hang you as a murderer.
Yeah.
So I was kind of hoping that would be her thing that she told Davos, like, I'm going to be dead before the dawn. Because I thought it'd be like they're all coming together. And then Jon would be like, well, hey, thank you for your help. But I said that if you would have come back, I would hang you as a murderer. And she's like, yeah, I know. So let's do it.
Yeah. I did see people were a little upset online, which I get, that Jorah's was not the last death. Like, there was the kind of big, meaningful death, and then it sort of switched to ending not with a bang, but a whimper, and it's like her just walking off, which, like, I have mixed feelings about. And then the other thing was... it almost seemed to me like she was like, well, I told people that I was going to die before the dawn, and I haven't died yet, so I guess I better do that just so I can have told the truth. Like, it was like proving to other people what she said versus like any actual reasoning behind it. But
that's kind of been her thing from the beginning, is proving.
Yeah.
And again, I brought up somewhere, because another salty comment was like, what about the whole prophecy? Well, first of all, I mean, the message throughout the series is that you need to feel sketchy about prophecies. You shouldn't put too much weight behind prophecies. I mean, look at Stannis' story. Look at where prophecy led him. But I wonder if there's supposed to be a wink and a nod that Melisandre is technically the prince or princess that was promised. We don't know her origin, but the whole idea of wielding a flaming sword against the dark, like that shot of the Dothraki was kind of like one big giant flaming sword.
Yeah, that's true.
I for all the nitpicks I have and other questions about Dragonglass and Valyrian Steel and all of it, that final moment of her walking out past the piles of bodies, taking off her choker, the light going out on the ruby, and her just fading away into nothing. I think there's something tragically beautiful about it. Her being like, I've served my purpose, and that's the only reason I've been going as long as I have, and now I'm done. Goodbye. And going out on that. I can understand people being upset. It's like you have Jorah would like to go out on something that we care about more, but I don't know. That's tough.
Yeah. This is my own head. I worry that is going to be this season as a whole. In that, I mean, I said before, like, I was more excited about the big battle between good and evil than I was about the rest of this, which I realize is not kind of like, or hasn't been the main thrust of the seasons before. But I worry that it was like, yes, now there's this big battle, and then we're going to wrap up the other thing, which is not going to be as epic, but like, we'll try and make it, but it'll kind of, just end. And
Right.
Yeah. So like, I'm worried that the ending of this episode is a microcosm for the ending of the season, of the series, but we'll see, I guess.
Something I've been thinking about a lot lately is when we first met and we're becoming friends, is when the show was premiering. And I remember watching it week to week, and I would come into work Monday mornings, and I would go straight to your desk and be like, when are the White Walkers showing up again? Like every Monday it was that. When are we going to get more White Walkers? Because that opening scene of the series is so crazy and bonkers, and then we never get back to that. And we get teased every now and then, but it's not until the season 2 finale that we even glimpse another White Walker.
Yeah.
So with that criticism about the climax being here in the middle of the season and the Night King being dead already in one episode, one battle. Well, first of all, that criticism of like it was only one battle.
I have no issues
It's just-
with that. Yeah, that's stupid.
Well, one like pitched battle, but I mean, how much? I mean, we've had the massacre at Hardhome. Well, you have the Fist of the First Men, the massacre at Hardhome,
Yeah, they've been coming for a while.
the Frozen
Like,
Lake. Yeah, there's been.
yeah.
We've had a lot of White Walker action.
Yeah.
So it's not like this is the first time and then done. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make, I feel like if you take somebody that knows nothing about Game of Thrones, like I was when it started, and you hand them all the Blu-rays and say, this is a show about good versus evil and this supernatural menace, the White Walkers. Watch, enjoy. Like, how long do you think they will make it through
Yeah.
before they give up with that kind of expectation? So that's another kind of, I mean, I get it. It's like the biggest spectacle we've had on the show. A lot of human versus human, but the one that really gets us going is that White Walker action. So I understand that disappointment, but it's relatively a small part of the show
Yeah, that's definitely true.
compared to everything else. And when I try to get people hooked on the show, and one of the things I always say is the opening scene with the White Walkers, whether you love it or hate it, don't put any stock behind it. That's not what the show is about. Because I think about my own experience, and if someone loves that opening the way I did, they'll be very disappointed watching the rest of season 1. And if they hated that opening scene, like if somebody watched that opening scene and been like, this is too graphic, this is horrifying, you got all these like decapitated people, there's a dead kid, reanimated, I'm out.
Yeah.
I would say like, no, you gotta stick with it. That's not what the show is about.
Right.
So people being upset that and then the other thing is they say, and now Cersei's our big bad. That's another problem I have. It's like if you're talking about Game of Thrones and the concept of a big bad, like it's a season of Buffy or something, it's like that's not what the show is.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the show has like pushed it even more so than the books have. And so like to their own kind of, detriment, I guess, because yeah, like it is mostly about something else, but over the past, season-ish, we've kind of been taken in by what John has been saying, that like this is the only thing that matters, and we're like, okay, well now this is the only thing that matters and it's over. So
Right. Do you think the writers at a certain point, like maybe after Hardhome, that episode, do you think they thought like, oh shit, people love this a little too much, we're kind of screwed, because that's
yeah, maybe.
that's not what the end game is.
Yeah. I don't know.